This is Oromo Voice Radio English program. Oromo Voice Radio is broadcasting to Oromia at 16-meter band or 17,850 kilohertz or on oromovoice.org website. OVR broadcasts Oromia Insight program every Monday for 15 minutes at 7:15 p.m. Oromia local time. Welcome to Oromia Insight program.
Welcome to Oromia Insight. My name is Ali Galato. This is part 2 interview with Professor Abbas Ganamo about conquesting and resisting Ethiopian Empire. What is your understanding about ethnic identity and national identity in Ethiopian Empire?
So the term ethnicity is simply widely used. Whenever we use the term ethnicity, it's mostly the term used for collectivity that share a myth of origin. Say, for example, we have the same origin, we come from the same roots, our ancestors are the same. So some people say ethnicity means people who have common origins, common ancestors. Say, for example, Somalis say they are from Somalis. Oromo say we are from Oromo, from one person who descended from where Oromo is descended. Some people say ethnicity is created not through origin, but somehow through migration, settlement, or colonization of a new territory. So there is a way to look at it. So ethnic identity, of course, a complicated one. Some people believe what we call primordialist. These people believe ethnicity is a given fact of life. It is a memorial kinship group. That means something which cannot change, which remains the same. Some people say, of course, ethnicity is something which is created, fabricated by elites to achieve political goals. And of course, some modern elites mobilize ethnicity to achieve political goals. In my case, in my study in anthropology, of course, I realize Oromo identity is not primordial. That means it's not something which is biologically created over hundreds of thousands of years ago. It is simply in flux, something which moves. But what is true, the Oromo people have common identity, common language, which simply defines your people. For example, we speak common language despite our dispersion. We used to have the Gada system, although the Gada system is disappearing in many parts of Oromia. It is simply common for all, and many Oromos claim common origins and, of course, common symbols, which is Oromoness. So the point I'm making is, therefore, in multi-ethnic states like Ethiopia, where you have different groups, there is always one group which wants to define what you call national identity. What happened in this case, of course, Amharas, of course, like us, they have their own language, their own religion, their own cultural values. But when the Amhara of Shawa became the strongest one, they simply tried to promote their language, Amharic language, their religion was Orthodox Christianity. They believed, naturally, they started to believe that this is simply superior to other cultures. This has to be taken for national identity, which means that now what is happening in Ethiopia, therefore, you have ethnic identities, or which is evolving towards national identity by many people, but the dominant group chose its own identity to be national one. For example, in Ethiopia, there was an attempt to really change place names, people's names. Some people were simply induced for conversion. Those people who simply refused to accept Christianity were not promoted. In many ways, therefore, there were pressure or some kind of reward for assimilation to be Christians. What is happening now? You have the difficulty of simply including everyone in this Amhara-based national identity. So if Ethiopianness, according to Ethiopian elites, associated with Christianity and Amhara identity, how other people can simply be part of this identity? That simply leads to competing identity between ethnic identity and the national identity which was promoted by the Ethiopian state, especially after Menelik and Haile Selassie. They all tried to promote their own identity. As you all know, Amharic was encouraged to be taught, to be used in all workplaces for official purposes. Oromo language was not allowed to be spoken in courts and, of course, in schools. So this simply created more or less the crisis of exclusive national identity. So in multi-ethnic state, therefore, this is always a contradiction between ethnic identity and the identity chosen by the government. What is interesting to see, of course, was simply when the Amhara government, which was based on assimilation, on denying differences, was abolished, the Tigrayans now came up with another way of defining identity, national identity, which is what they call voluntary union of nationalities and the nation. And of course, they wanted to address theoretically the contradiction between exclusive national identity proposed by the Amhara and, of course, to create a new nation. But in reality, of course, the federal model doesn't simply mean that they have settled the national question in Ethiopia, and the current regime has promised federal model based on ethnic identity. But in reality, of course, it's used this as a way of manipulation, ethnic difference from above. So in Ethiopia, therefore, the issue of self-determination, the issue of national identity remain unsolved, and of course, that is the topic I wanted to address in my book, especially the last chapter, which discusses from Ethiopian empire, from empire state to nation state, is simply the effort by the Amhara, which failed. And of course, I really doubt also the current experiment of ethnic federalism to address the national question in Ethiopia. So basically, my argument is simply this solution, although theoretically attractive, is not the best way of answering the national question in Ethiopia.
So what is the relationship between Oromo and Ethiopia?
So this is, of course, an interesting question again. And of course, the Oromo and the Ethiopian Christian kingdom, of course, have different way of looking at things. They were neighbors. Of course, they were in long struggle, especially for more than 400 years. So whenever we talk about the Oromo, therefore, the Oromo are widely dispersed in very vast areas of land. Some of them are in northern Ethiopia. Some of them, of course, where our ancestors lived in Arsi, Bale, Sidama area, in Hara. So the interaction between the Oromo people and the Ethiopian state depends, of course, on geographic proximity of these people. Of course, that means physical contact. In some areas, of course, some Oromos were assimilated into the Amhara culture. Some of them, of course, might have absorbed some elements of Christian elements in northern part of Ethiopia. So sometimes they mingled with them. Sometimes, of course, they were absorbed by them, depending, of course, on the situation. Even at time in Gondar, in Wollo area, they were also integrated into political structures in this region. I think Dr. Muhammad, in a recently published book, I discussed aspect of this over a long period of time, what happened to these Oromos and in the region. So one of the interesting side, which I read and which I wrote in my book also, there were RC elements which used to fight against a Christian kingdom. They were defeated and they were captured. Eventually, they settled in Gondar region. I cannot really tell you what happened to these RCs who settled in Gondar region. So that means they might have been, now they might have become Amharas, Gondares. So sometimes it's very difficult when people war and people are captured, when people settle in some areas, some people practically lose their identities. So as you know, as far as I'm concerned, in the region I studied, the RC Oromo country, there was no really long, notable interaction between the Christian kingdom and the Oromo people. As you know, RC Oromos are neighbored by other Oromos such as Guji, the Borana, and of course to the north, the Tulama and the Karagil, and in the eastern side to the Oromo of Harar, and then of course to the southeast with Somali. So there was no direct link between the Christian population and the RC. They were not trading, they were not interacting. The only time the RC came in direct face-to-face was simply when they started to conquer the RC country in 1840s. That means more than 150 or 60 years ago. So the Amhara first conquered the Tulama, the Shawan Oromo, and then the first state when they fully in control of the Oromo country of Shawa, the second was RC country. This is at that time, of course, the RC directly confronted with the with the Amhara. So there is no direct really interaction, no intermarriages. I don't know anything if the RC before then married to Amharas or Amhara. So there was no really such peaceful interaction between the RC and the Amhara, except that, of course, when they confronted each other for the war, we mentioned initially in 1840s, the war didn't really continue for some time because of the development in Ethiopia. Then the major war, as I will be discussing, started in late 1870s and early 1880s when Emperor Menelik started to wage the war. We'll be discussing in more details. So to answer, it depends, of course, where these Oromos are and, of course, where they live, the geography, and, of course, how these people interacted at some given point of their history. So that's simply the point I want to make.
You write about the crisis of state legitimacy in your book. Can you explain on that?
Yes, it is state power means about legitimacy. Legitimacy means who has a right to rule any people. So historically, you see, all people have different mechanisms, how people rule each other, how people are elected, how people are simply allowed to rule for some time or for a short period of time, for a long period of time. This is what we call legitimate political authority. So I will try to give some theoretical explanation to make my point. Maybe some of the academic reader who may listen to us. So I'm referring to a German writer who tried to theorize this idea, what he calls legitimate authority. So all societies are ruled normally by legitimate authority. This legitimate authority is posed on three levels, three types of legitimacy. The first one, he called it, his name was Max Weber, a German sociologist who is well known for theory. He simply said legitimate authority comes from three sources. The first one is traditional authority, which is legitimized by sanctity of tradition. When people accept any ruler according to the tradition, is legitimate. For example, if you elect Sagada leader, he is legitimate. It doesn't matter. It doesn't require anybody to give him any permission. He can rule over Oromos. If people believe in Kalu or Sheikh, naturally he is legitimate. That's, of course, traditional authority. The second source of authority is called charismatic authority, which is founded on in a leader whose mission inspires others. So sometimes it happens in some situations there are charismatic leaders, prophets, people who have extraordinary capacity, who emerge, whom people follow to be ruled. That means they accept willingly that these leaders are our leaders and will follow them. So these prophets or people with extra capacity. So the last one is legal rational authority, which is simply empowered by formal rules and the constitution. That means elections, legal, rational. So if you want to rule, then you have to base your authority on these three principles: traditional, charismatic, legal, rational. So in the case of my question is then, in which Ethiopian government can claim its legitimacy coming from one of these sources? None. Ethiopian government authority is based on force, as I mentioned, because Ethiopia is an empire. Empire doesn't need to justify its own rule because they just rule, they just use force. So, for example, you may say traditional Ethiopian kings, monarchs claimed their origin was from Solomonic dynasty and therefore they had the right to rule. This was written in what they call Kibla Nagast. So they had this kind of claim, which was traditional, which applies only to the Christian population. So Oromos, Somalis, other people simply do not have any reason to accept this traditional claim. And that's why, for example, when Menelik came to the Arsi country, so the Oromo were not willing to accept him. He said, I'm the king, you have to accept my rule. And the Arsi say, Malik Sigabbarra. He couldn't answer because he felt the Oromo also have to recognize his claim to Solomonic dynasty, which was the grandson of he claims that was descending from Solomon. So in the same way, of course, the Derg came to power.
This interview will continue next week.